Hello Perth, we're in Nairobi, Kenya, and as you can see we're outside of Alive and Kicking, which is a company that makes footballs. Now of course footballs in Africa are a major part of everyday life, but of course the problem is some of the footballs that come from Europe or Australia can't sustain the life of a normal football in Europe or wherever, because the conditions under which they're meant to be played here in Africa are a lot harsher. So this company's come up with a way of making balls by hand. They're all hand stitched and they last a lot longer, but they've done it at a price that is affordable for the locals, and it also creates employment for the locals. Now the target every year is 5,000 balls a month, so 60,000 balls a year. And we're going to go inside and show you how they make the balls here from woe to go, and you're going to see it's a fantastic industry and they're doing a fantastic job here in Africa because they've also opened offices in Zambia. We're now joined inside Alive and Kicking by Joel Kanuthia, and Joel, maybe you can just explain what's going on here.
Ashley, when the leather comes in, it comes in sheet form like you can see, and then we just do the cutting with very simple cutting dies. Each football is made of 32 panels. There's 20 hexagons and 12 pentagons, and what we do is we have to cut these individual panels using those cutting dies that you can see sitting on the cutting machine, and he just moves the clicking press on top of the cutting die, and he moves it, and then he clicks down and he keeps cutting. That's exactly what happens there. You just put the leather on top of the machine, you move the cutting die, and you click, and it comes down and it cuts. And as it cuts, it pulls out the stitching holes, and it cuts the edges of the panels, and that's exactly what you see going on.
And Joel, what's this quality control here?
Yes, Ashley, this is basically where Jane is doing the sorting of the panels. She has to go through every single panel individually by hand, just to make sure the quality of the panel is good enough for stitching. Now, if indeed it is good enough for stitching, she will stack them in the 32 pieces. The one she just thrown across is a reject, and that we will use to make a lesser quality football. But other than that, everything else that's not a reject, she would stack up and just make sure it's fit enough to go into a football, so a standard ball.
Now, Joel, obviously one of the things you can do is you can brand the footballs here, and I presume this is what we're seeing being done.
Yes, Ashley, this is exactly what's being done here, and Juma and his team here. Juma's been printing, I'm guessing, longer than I've been alive. So Juma and his team here do the printing. Everything is done using very traditional screen printing techniques. You can see we just have a wooden frame. Onto that we put a mesh cloth. We expose the artwork, so the graphics, onto that cloth. And once Juma's done the setting, he just puts the panel in the slot. He then puts the screen on top of the panel, and then he just squeezes the ink across, and that gives the print towards the client's specifications. So yes, this is indeed where we do all our printing. So everything we print in this workshop is done by hand, and is done by Juma and his team right here.
And looking at it, it must dry very quickly.
Yes, we basically just do a mixture of a special hardener in the ink that allows it to like quick dry. That way he can get through a big number of panels quite quickly without having to worry about it rubbing off onto other panels.
And I presume there's other colours you can do as well?
Yes, we can do them in a range of colours, and we've done them for various corporates, so there's no limit to what colour a Juma can do. As long as colour can be found, we're more than happy to print the balls for them.
Joel, now the bladders, I believe, actually come from India. They're not made in Africa.
Correct. There's no one making these locally on a large scale, so we have to bring these in from India. That's what the bladder looks like, and that's the actual thread that goes into the football, or to put the football together. So we bring these in bulk, and we give them along with a set of panels. Or Nancy behind me would give them along with a set of panels to each stitcher, along with some thread that's just enough to make one ball.
Okay, Joel, we're now in the stitching centre, and this is where I presume the balls are completed.
Yes, Ashley, all the stitching takes place here, and what happens is they start off by making two halves of a ball. That's 16 panels, and they and of course once they have these two halves, they would then go on to joining these two halves together. Now, other than the panels and the bladder and the thread, something else they will get is they have two needles that they use to put the footballs together. They have some latex, and they get some beeswax that they run in the thread. So those are just some of the components that they would use to stitch the ball.
And how many balls do you look to make in a month?
Our target on a monthly basis is about 3,500, but that depends on how much work we have. So in a good month, we would be able to make and sell about 8,000 footballs if things are really good for us.
And how many staff do you have here?
We currently have about 80 young stitchers, young men and women who are basically employed full time to make these footballs. We basically pay them per ball they make, and they are required to make a minimum of 3 footballs in a day. But again, like I said, when there's good work, some of them can make up to 4 or 6 footballs.
Is it now a job that people really want to get here in Kenya?
Well, yes, I think, because the beauty about this is, one, you get paid for what you're able to make. So if you're making four balls or 6 balls, then you get a bit of more money as compared to the guy who's making 3 balls. And for me, I sort of think of it as an art, actually. These are young guys who would otherwise not have jobs and would possibly be sitting in informal settlements, but they're here, and for me, I think it's a skill that we might not have left in a couple of years. So that's how I see them, I think, as being lucky and privileged to be able not only to earn a living, but to do something that they seemingly enjoy, and that's making these footballs.
After each ball is completed in the stitching room, it's inflated and put on a rack for 24 hours to make sure that the bladder doesn't leak. If it doesn't, the balls are washed, they're then deflated and then packaged up for whoever's bought them. And as you can see, Alive and Kicking have got some fantastic orders here. I'm standing amongst those waiting to be collected. It is a fantastic project offering employment to people here in Kenya and also in Zambia.